Welcome to Real Chat with Kat, the podcast that's all about real conversations for real transformation. I'm your host, Kat Polsinelli, professional speaker, MC, and best-selling international author. Here, we tackle the tough stuff, the mud that we all have found ourselves in. We talk about the pivots, the challenges, and the victories that shape our lives and our businesses. From overcoming trauma and finding your voice to navigating life's unexpected twists, we get raw, honest, and open. You'll hear from inspiring guests who share their stories of resilience, healing, and growth. Whether it's breaking through emotional abuse, embracing self-worth, or thriving in entrepreneurship, you'll find connection, empowerment, and the tools to keep you moving forward. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and get ready for stories that hit home and conversations that make a difference. Let's get real together. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Real Chat with Kat. I'm so excited to have you here with me today, and I have such a fun guest, and I think I have really enjoyed learning the way people's brains work. And so I feel like you fall right into that space. And it's so funny because I was literally having this conversation with my husband the other day about how he does things and how different it is from the way that I do things. And anyway, I'm so excited to dive into this conversation and get to share with the audience not only all of your knowledge, but also kind of your backstory as well, right? So thank you, Angela, for joining the podcast today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is awesome.
I'm so excited. All right. So, as we dive in, then before we get started, tell everybody who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay. So my full name, Angela Marie D'Antonio. I like to use it all for some reason.
I love it.
I It's my Italian heritage. I'm very proud of it. I am an executive coach for neurodivergent founders, as well as a keynote speaker. So I help neurodivergent founders build their businesses around how their brain works and help them build to their strengths. And then the wider work that I do is I also do some writing and some speaking for wider audiences on, standards that were set, questioning those standards, trying to find your strengths, trying to measure what you're good at instead of maybe what you're behind on. And so that work as well is happening in the background. I'm building that as well.
Oh, I love this so much. And I am a huge fan of anyone learning things the way that best suits them, right? I think that I was having this conversation with someone like 2 weeks ago about how we've really taught people to be in a box, like to go down one pathway, to do one thing for the rest of their life, and that's it, right? And you may have a hobby or something on the side. And it's so funny because I feel like I have learned so much about the capabilities that we have as individuals. And I found this through art. And so I'm not a huge art person. My husband is. And we sat down one evening and we were watching this show on the Renaissance era and the Rococo era and all these different things and the meanings behind some of the paintings and stuff. And what I found really fascinating was most of the painters that this person was discussing, it was like they're a painter and they're a sculptor and it's a philosopher and this person does architect. Everyone had this beautiful broad spectrum of who they were. And it was kind of like a light bulb moment for me because I've always tried to shove myself into one hole. This is what I'm due for the rest of my life. And that has never worked. I can think in every job I've ever had, I would learn what to do and be like, all right, I want to learn more. What's the next thing? Right. I always was the one that was cross-trained in different areas because I got bored and I love being able to take in that information. And personally, and I want your opinion on this, Angela, I feel like we as human beings really are multifaceted individuals. And while we have been pushed down this rabbit hole of you choose a career and that's what you do, from a young age, I think that it's stifling us. And I think that It is maybe some of the reason why a lot of us feel burnt out or depressed or feel like we're not fulfilled in life because we're trying to make everything about us and around us about this one thing, which is probably a job that you're not really happy with anyway.
Ah, well, and it starts very young, right? People are always asking, 5-year-olds, I don't know why we do this in America, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? Like
Yeah.
it's so, it is, you kind of get put into a lane. And it is interesting to kind of see, especially as things are changing faster and faster, right? Like my children,
Yeah.
are kind of on the cusp of leaving the nest. So 16 and 18 and even still, even 4 years after, say, a college degree, bless you.
Thank you. I was trying not to sneeze into the.
That was cute. But I feel like even now with things are changing so much faster, they always say there's jobs like that will exist when our kids are grown that we haven't even imagined. But I can even
Hmm.
see like in a year or two because things are changing so much more rapidly that it's hard to, people want to be put in a lane. And sometimes it makes it easier to understand, if I'm going to be something very concrete, a nurse, a doctor, an engineer.
Hmm.
And most of the time, life doesn't work out that way. We pivot, we change, we have things in our lives that make us reevaluate where we're headed. And so getting really stuck on that concrete endpoint is something that in some ways is hurting people and not recognizing that life, you have to be able to kind of flex with what happens in life.
And I love the fact that you're saying pivot because I think about my lifespan and just all the things that I've been through and all the things that have happened, and there are so many moments where it's almost like one part of me was just done being that part, and here we go to something different, right? And this is not against anyone that is like, I found my dream job and I love it. I've been doing it for 25 years. Like,
Yeah.
congratulations to you. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And I do feel like there's a good bit of society that isn't in that space, right? I know that I don't fall in that. I have a really hard time with that. I also have 10,000 ideas of stuff as well. But I definitely think there's both sides of the coin. It's just from what I have seen and the people I talk to and stuff like that, I am seeing that more people are testing things out, trying side hustles, doing things a little bit differently, right? I've interviewed people that have full-time day jobs and do coaching on the back end, right? Like, and I think that there is a beautiful way to live your life in a way that works best for you. And that might not necessarily mean that it fits into the societal norm that I think that we've grown up with, like you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I have ADHD myself. So I am like the key girl of once I figure something out, I need something new to do, right? I need a new challenge. And I, my interest is very challenge based. And so I find something, I figure it out. And then once I do, I need a new challenge, right? And that's kind of what keeps me, what drives me over time. And it's 100%, due to the fact that I have ADHD. But, there are plenty of us out there that have that sort of experience and need
Hmm.
something to keep that drive going as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you said, you have ADHD. Have you always known that? Was that a later diagnosis? Like what got you in the realm of deciding like neurodivergent is the direction and the people that I want to coach with and work with? How did you get in that space?
There's a few things that kind of came to light over time. So both of my kids are neurodivergent. So I homeschooled them. I realized actually very early on that school was not going to give them what they need. In fact, my
Mm.
oldest only did kindergarten. And even within the kindergarten classroom, was, her work was slow in that it just took her longer to do everything that she had to do. And I came to find out at the parent teacher conference that she was doing really great work and getting really good grades, but she never got recess because she was finishing her work. You have to finish your work before you go outside to play in school. So you're saying a
Oh.
5-year-old is not getting recess. And then when we asked her about it when we got home, she actually said it's because I want to do good work, which is kind of heartbreaking because like as
Oh.
a parent, you don't want to say, "Oh no, don't do good work. You need to play. It's important for you." Like that was and she, honestly, she's 18 now. She's still that same child. And so we realized that that really wasn't going to work for her. My youngest child, also, has so my oldest has dyslexia and dyscalculia and my youngest has ADHD. And so we pulled them out of school. Pulled the first out of school, the second didn't go until high school, and decided to homeschool them. So that was a piece. So over time, I learned how to support them. I wasn't great at it at the beginnings, especially because at the time I had undiagnosed ADHD myself. And so there was a lot
Okay.
of managing that happened over the years and things that I learned and things that I learned to support them. My dyslexic daughter, I became Barton trained so that I could teach her how to read and spell. I did all the things I needed to support my kids, but I also was learning along the way. And one of the reasons I started doing what I'm doing is because I wanted to help people behind me because I figured things out way too late. And I would love to help some parent or some family have a little more
Hmm.
ease in the process. But when my youngest got diagnosed with ADHD, she was actually like around 13 before we figured it out. And some of that was because she was homeschooled and we naturally accommodated her. And then the doctor that diagnosed her was a friend of mine. And I was like, but I do all these things.
Oh
And he was like, yeah, you do. So I think there are a lot of women in their 40s right now, are getting diagnosed with ADHD. And,
no.
there's a few reasons for it. For the most part, kids get diagnosed with ADHD when they're disruptive in class. And
Yeah.
most of the time, females are quietly suffering, I hate to say, in the
Hmm.
classroom. And so they don't get caught because they're not disrupting everyone around them. So that happens. And so people don't get diagnosed. But in their 40s, there's two things that are happening. One is my story. My kid got diagnosed, and suddenly I realized here, like this makes sense, right? Like all the light bulbs went off. And so I was actually 47 when I was diagnosed. And then I think there's another thing that happens is during perimenopause, which, really starts
Oh,
to run
girl.
even 37 is when most people start to have some signs that
Yeah.
of perimenopause. That makes all of the issues with ADHD worse. In fact, I had a friend who said they thought their ADHD had ADHD because they were kind of getting, as a female, getting into that edging up on 40 and starting to have hormonal shifts that actually make the symptoms
Hmm.
so much worse. And so those are, those are a lot of the reasons why, women in our 40s are starting to get diagnosed at record levels.
Well, and like you said too, it's always interesting to me because my oldest one was diagnosed with ADHD, and I noticed that something was off when he was like in second grade. And it wasn't that he was really disruptive in the class. However, he was definitely like the teacher's helper, right? Like anything extra he could do, like stuff that kind of kept him going. But what really kind of caught my attention and one of the reasons why I had him tested was because when we would have conversations, he would be telling me a story, and in the middle of the story he would just like stop and he would go into another story. And I was like, whoa, whoa, what just hold on. I'm like, that you where like I mean just like we opened one book, read half of it, and went to another book, and it was like a completely different subject. And I was like, oh my gosh, like he's going to start reading and stuff like that. Like this is going to be a problem. Like I was really concerned for him. But again, and I love that you're talking about this because I didn't have the ability to pull him out of school, but I did also want to make sure, like, how can we do things different? How can I watch what he eats, monitor certain things, and not make him feel like he's an outsider just because
Mhm.
his brain functions differently, right? So like lists were a big thing from him for him. So when we did chores and stuff, it was like dot by dot by dot, right? It wasn't like
Yeah.
two or three things, right? If it was clean the bathroom, it was we're going to wipe the toilet down, we're going to wipe the countertop down, we're going to wipe the mirror down, we're going to wipe like everything. But giving him that detail and that direction was super helpful for him.
Mhm.
And to this day, he still does that. And I tell him that all the time, like, where's your notebook that you carry around to write like your random notes? Because that's just how you operate. There's nothing wrong with it. But it's interesting that I have found out how easy it is to diagnose boys because generally they're disruptive, they're loud, they're what do we call hyperactive, quote unquote,
Yes.
right? That's the big thing. They're hyperactive. I don't know about y'all guys, but I ran around like a maniac when I was a kid. So and my boys are the same way. They're just very active, right? But I always understood ADHD for a really long time until I started looking into it. I had met someone else that was on my podcast about a year and a half ago around neurodivergency. And that's when I really realized like there are all these different forms And so you don't have to be hyperactive. And I agree with you. I think that's why a lot of times girls don't get diagnosed with that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like, especially when my oldest one was young, and that he's tw almost 22 now, that it was more of a boy problem than it was a girl problem. Like it
Yeah,
was
yeah. I mean,
labeled that way.
yeah, in the population, it's when they run studies, there it isn't more commonly boys, but boys tend to be diagnosed 3 times as often as girls, again, because they tend to
Oh.
be more often than not, they say the hyperactivity for a girl is in their heads, right? So they're not it's not necessarily physical, right? They're not always fidgeting or running around or things of
Hmm.
that sort. A lot of times it's actually just the voice that's kind of running in their head. Like somebody described it as, the squirrels like running around in their head. So just a wild thing,
Yes.
which is actually why, and more often than not, women, instead of getting diagnosed with ADHD, get diagnosed with anxiety, and it's usually because of
Interesting.
that, like they have that voice running in their head all the time, but they're constantly trying to, behave and sit still and be quiet and do the things they're being told to do, or be nice, or whatever those messages are that they always
Hmm.
give to young girls. And that, because of that, because those two things don't align, they start to develop anxiety. And so more often than not now, what they're starting to see in the clinics, like girls who are being diagnosed with anxiety in high school, it's often because they have undiagnosed ADHD.
How interesting is that? Okay, so now
Yeah.
I have a question then. What have you seen in people that you've worked with that really kind of shows you the difference in, symptoms for women having ADHD versus men, right? Because I hear what you're saying about the brain. I feel like I have a constant monologue going on all the time, but like it
Ditto.
almost became a superpower of mine, like as a kid, right? Like nobody ever thought to diagnose me with anything, and I still haven't been diagnosed. Well, there's a really good chance, especially going into perimenopause, because boy, my brain. But it was
Yeah.
like, it was cool and it was fantastic if I could sit down and do homework, listen to music, and watch TV, and then be able to like all three at the same time, right? Like it was just like, oh my God, she's so smart. Like that was just the thing when I was a kid, right? So I'm curious because I know that there are probably so many people now are like, oh my God, I was just diagnosed with anxiety and maybe it's not that. Like, where are you seeing these symptoms then that are so different from what we've been statistically told?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is as you said, a lot of times people with ADHD are very successful. Actually, if you even look at, some, Simon Sinek, Trevor Noah,
Love
Stephen
him.
Bartlett, like a lot of very successful people have ADHD because, the idea that it can be a superpower, some people don't love that, that framing for ADHD, but it is something that, I can turn it on sometimes, and hyper focus can be a really amazing thing. You
Yeah.
can build a website in like 4 hours, right? It's, it can be. And so a lot of times you in school, especially as you're growing up, if you're able, if you're regulated enough that you know how to use that, focus, if you drink your cup of caffeine and put on your headphones and you can focus and get a lot of things done, a lot of people with ADHD tend to do well in school. So then you're getting rewarded for that behavior over and over again.
Mm.
And so that's the other piece that, makes that anxiety even worse, is because then you're trying to keep up with this. I'm the straight A student. I'm the one who's, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I got to, I can do this. I can do 3 clubs. Yeah, I can, write the newspaper article, and, it's like all of the things, because you
Yeah.
keep getting rewarded for your successes. And so you keep trying to keep the ball going in the air, right? And some of what happens too with people with ADHD, because again, you you also have times when you can't focus, right? Or you can't do things like everyone else does. These morning
Hmm.
routines where you see these people online, and I'm like, I'm so successful because I wake up at 5 a.m. and I do these 10 things before I get to work every morning. And I have never known anyone who's neurodivergent who can really do that really well, like have that kind of a schedule. And people tend to beat themselves up about it. And so people
Absolutely.
like waste, in some ways they waste their time and their energy beating themselves up about something that is actually part of who they are. So a lot of what I do when I work with founders is kind of walk through that, right? And one of the things that's happened to me in two realms, because I think I'm just getting older, I'm edging on 50, and because I raised these kids who are neurodivergent, I would never speak to, I learned not to speak to myself the way, because I wouldn't speak that way to my children, right?
Mm,
Like you're so much kinder to your children than you often
yep.
are in your inner voices. And just learning to accept that some days I just won't have focus and I won't get things done, and that's okay because that's just who I am. Instead of spending another day beating myself up about the fact that I couldn't focus that day, right? And that's part of what people need to work through, but also why people tend to have, higher rates of depression and anxiety when they're neurodivergent, because in some ways they're living in a world that was not made around how their brains work. And so they're constantly getting messages that there's something wrong with them, or that why can't you do it like this? Or like my
Mm-hmm.
dyslexic daughter is like probably one of the most brilliant people I know. Like she's so smart, but she still works very slowly. And because of that, people assume that she's dumb, right? There's like this
Yeah.
message that she keeps being given because she takes longer to do something. So, in a conversation, people are like, "Oh my gosh, she's so brilliant. She can hold her own with a professor, and she's so well read." But if she has to write something, then it's going to take longer. If she has to read something, it's going to take longer. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a misalignment with, how the world works in some ways, and how you work, and finding a way to bring those together without it affecting your self-esteem and your way of being in the world. It's a really difficult thing.
Absolutely. And there's so many judgments that are already out there, in the world. Like I've talked about this so many times on the podcast that like I feel like we have this like invisible book, right? Of like how people are supposed to work, what timeline they're supposed to be in, where they're supposed to
Yeah.
be at a certain age. Like there's all these things and it's all horse crap, like if I'm being honest. But it's really interesting that like we as a society have just like we've adopted it, and we're so quick to judge everyone else. And I agree with you. I've met some amazing people that take a little bit longer in the things that they do, but what they do is absolutely amazing, right? And I
Mm.
think that that's a gift to be able to slow down and be in that moment. And then I have other people that I've worked with that they're like, oh, I'm in a moment. And like 2 hours later, like, I'm done. I'm like, what just happened? And I think that again, I think that that's a superpower. But I think that in Western society, we have been taught to judge absolutely everything, that we've like lost the context of individuals and accepting people for who they are and not needing them to be exactly as you are, right? Like, I think that, and I was in this space. I remember that, especially when I worked in the medical field, like I judged. I'm gonna be honest. I talked about this in my TEDx talk. I judged everyone. But what I also realized was when I was judging others, I was also judging myself for those same standards. And if
Hmm.
I wasn't meeting those standards, then it was a problem, right? And so over the years of really like working through that and learning to love the differences in the individuals that I've met, I've also learned to love the differences within myself, which has been a tremendous weight off of my shoulders, right?
Yeah.
Because not only do I not judge outward, but I'm also not judging myself. And I found that really interesting about how our inner monologue is also the perception, right? And it's what we push onto other people all at the same time.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we like to quantify things, school systems, with their guidelines, there's so businesses obsessed with ROI. Not everything can be tied to a dollar, and yet businesses, want to somehow, like all of
Hmm.
those ways in which we measure things. We love to measure things, right? We love to be able to
Oh,
have a bar
yes.
graph to show that, exactly what was accomplished. And that's, one of the things I think in schools, especially they're really hurting students. I feel that technically behind is a term that is relative. It could be argued that any individual is exactly where they belong at any given time.
Mm,
Like no one is
yeah.
behind. You're where you belong. You're who you are in this given moment in your life. That's was the question that sort of led to everything I do, my work in education, my writing, what I do with founders. Behind everybody is up at 3 a.m. worried that they're behind, especially I feel in like the AI era where everything's
Oh,
getting faster and
absolutely.
faster and everyone,
Yeah.
somebody's, jumping somebody else is working 24/7 and they're going to get there faster than me. And it's a concept that I feel people need to learn to let go of a little bit. I think that you can grow. I feel like you can be ambitious. You can do all kinds of stuff without constantly having to get on that grind and feel behind all the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you even talked about this, it's on your website as well about this like urgency, culture that we live in where it's like bigger, better, faster, and again, it comes back to that comparison. And I get, right? It's easy to fall into that trap, especially with social media now, right? Because
100%.
everybody is posting about the best versions of all their things. And it really even took me a long time to realize that somebody could be posting the happiest day in their life, but that happened several days ago and they're at home crying on a couch, right? Like
Yeah.
people choose what it is that they want you to see. And for whatever reason, we don't process it that way. We just, we're intaking so much information all at the same time. And
Mm.
speaking of that, now I have a question. So for those that do have ADHD that are in some form of neurodivergency, how does that affect like a day to day? Because I mean, I know how it affects me personally, but like I can't imagine, especially with the way that um, people process and stuff differently. And we are being so overloaded like all the time.
Yeah. 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 Well, I mean, one of the things that I tend to do with the neurodivergent founders that I work with is to try to turn off some of that noise.
Mm.
Instagram is like crazy addictive to me, and I mean, as soon as I lose hours if I get on there at all. I'm constantly like in this battle of like taking it off of my phone, and then I put it back on because I want to catch up with some friend, and then I get sucked in again. So it's one of those, but the messaging is so nefarious on there. There's, especially for like a founder that's neurodivergent, you're constantly I made, 20K months in 30 days and all these
Yep.
promises. People are always selling you the next course to make you rich and the next, AI tool that they've built that's going to make your business super easy and super, and it's so easy, especially when you're neurodivergent, to fall into these, and buy one more course because you think that's going to be the magic bullet. So one of the
Hmm.
things I do more than anything, I can't make people turn off their social media, but I do encourage them to control it. But the other pieces, I feel that the marketing that is happening right now, because so many companies are building their marketing with AI, they're all building it the same way. And there is
Makes
this
sense.
piece of marketing that is based on pain points, right? And
Hmm.
so all of the messaging, if you start looking at the advertising you're getting, especially on an Instagram, it is the message is the very first message you're always getting is you're inadequate. You're not keeping up. There's something wrong with you. I have the answer. That's the marketing method, right? And because everybody's learning marketing from the same place for the most part, that message is getting repeated even more. You're seeing it 100 times a day now instead of 10. Or 4 years
Mm.
ago, you saw it 3 times a day. It is, and so
Yeah.
you're constantly getting these messages that you're unworthy, right? And and the other piece I do is I really limit people's tech stack because everybody thinks that, you need this big complex funnel and you need this
Yep.
new tool, and people waste a lot of time researching the best tool for X, Y, or Z. And I can honestly say, especially with AI, in 2 weeks there's going to be a new tool. You can't constantly like chase the new tool because it's not, you think it's going to be better, it's going to improve your life like this much. And so you're going to lose another 2 hours researching the new tool and another half day to learning how to use the new tool. Like
Yep.
I limit people's tech stack pretty heavily when I work with them. And the last thing that I do more than anything is I encourage much more human to human interaction. I think it is very healthy for any human being, let alone somebody who's neurodivergent, to spend their time behind a screen and not interact with human beings. If
Mm.
it and it shows up in business in a lot of ways. They build a product, they build a course, and they make all these videos and they put all these things together, and they haven't even validated that somebody's going to buy it. So they put all this effort in, into something that they're not even sure that people are going to, even want. So that's a piece of it. Some of it too is sales conversations tend to be uncomfortable for people. They're very hard to get used to doing. And I worked in
Mm-hmm.
sales for a long time, so I have a pretty good background in sales, but people don't like to get into DMs because it's uncomfortable. They don't like to go to networking events because it feels a little bit uncomfortable. But that's where the real sales happens. That's where the real business comes from. And I actually had one founder that I worked with last summer, and I told them to close their computer and go to a networking event. And she looked at me like I had suggested using a fax machine, right? Like I was like the oldest person on earth. Like I needed a walker any moment now. But I was like, you know, or somebody recently, I encouraged them and they were trying to build some complicated funnel for their business. And I was like, you could just send out a few emails. You could just write one LinkedIn post that said, "Hey, I have two openings." It would be
Mm-hmm.
easier and it would actually work just as effectively as building some complex AI, lead gen funnel that brings people into you. So sometimes simple is the answer. And I think people lose sight of that with the chasing of the tech, with the messaging that you're constantly getting from social media or other business
Mm-hmm.
owners, or the whole hustle culture idea, which is something that I'm not a fan of. So a lot of it is just bringing simplicity back to the process.
Oh, I'm so glad that you said that because I am like 1000% in this arena. And I did this when I first started my business years ago, because you talk to all the people and everybody's got something different and everybody talks about how amazing every single piece of everything is. And that was one of the first things that I did was I was like, I have way too many things in too many places, and this is absolutely ridiculous. And simplifying things down is it's so funny how we overcomplicate how life is supposed to go because we think it's supposed to be difficult, we think it's supposed to be hard, or logically it doesn't make sense that I could just like do this simple thing and it's going to work. And you're right, the
Mhm.
messaging doesn't help either with all the crap that we get fed, but it really is amazing how if you just simplify life, right, to the best that you can,
Mhm.
one, it takes over the overwhelmed regardless, right? So now you can breathe. Now you're able to actually think a little bit more clear than you were before because you don't have as much on your plate. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that there are too many conversations, especially with AI, on how do we eliminate you from your business so your business can run and you don't have to do anything. And like personally, I don't care if I have millions of dollars in the bank, I'm going to be doing things. Like, I think about that. I
Mhm.
can't see a space in my world where I would just sit on the couch all day and watch TV, right? Or, just go walk in nature 24/7. Like,
Mhm.
I. I'm going to want to do things. I want to help people. I'm going to want to be a part of stuff. Now, yes, I'll travel more, but you're going to find me like learning different languages. Like there's going to be things in there that you're doing. Um, and I think that you're right. There's so many fear tactics, I think, that are out there right now that play against um, where we want to be. And it sucks because then that makes it, a lot harder to think about what could actually be done, right? It's like your logic just gets completely overwhelmed. And it's like, well, I've seen six of these ads that say, so there's no way I can get here unless,
Yeah.
um, yeah. For
Yeah.
whoever needed to hear that, get out of your socials. I actually turned all of my notifications off across all of my social platforms just because I am one of those people that if I see that stupid dot, I'm like, I need to check it. So I turned all of my notifications off on everything just so I wouldn't look at my phone and think that I needed to do it. I have a question though. You were talking about this earlier, and I'm curious on this one because I know that this is a huge thing that a lot of people talk about, not only in business owners, but like life in general. You were saying that, a lot of people talk about this beautiful, wonderful routine that they have in the morning, and how a lot of people that you work with struggle with having that. Can you go into that a little bit more for me? Like, what does that mean? Does it mean that they have to do something different every morning? Does it mean that we have problems getting up at the same time? Or does it just mean that they need that diversity where there's a little bit of an outline of a routine? However, there's also the ability to adapt in it. I'm curious.
Yeah, it is really difficult I mean, in particular, and I work with people who, dyslexic, autism, ADHD, but, especially with ADHD itself, um, to be able to stick to a routine. And so it can be, there's tricks that they teach you all the time, right? Like gamify it or, tie it to something else. Like if most of us, I hope, brush our teeth every morning, right? Like it's a thing that you've learned to do and it's just habit, right? And, of
Mm-hmm.
course, they talk about tying habits together, right? Like, so whenever I eat dinner, I take this vitamin, right? And so if I want to start taking this vitamin and I tie it to dinner, which is something that I tend to do every day, I can do that, but it's still difficult, and that's it's just the way that neurodivergent people's brain work. And the real trick is again, when you fail, to not beat yourself up about it, because people with exercise routines in particular, right? Like you miss a day and then you're like, oh,
Mm,
I just can't keep a routine, and then you just stop, right?
yeah.
The ability to just be kind to yourself and then get going again, because when you lose the momentum too, right? Like a streak is very useful, especially, for somebody who dopamine works for, right? You got a checkbox and you're like, look at the streak, I've got 7 days, and then you miss one, but then suddenly catastrophize because that one day got missed, and then suddenly you don't work out anymore, right? And
Mm-hmm.
part of it is, again, it's like being kind to yourself. Like, this is who I am. This is how my brain works. And recognizing different things, the morning routines are especially nefarious to me because I'm not a morning person. So that,
Mm,
like, in no world will I comfortably have a morning routine. In fact, my best work gets done between 8 p.m. and midnight every night. I am like a
interesting.
powerhouse in the evening. And so why did I keep trying to fit myself into a box that clearly wasn't my box to begin with, right? So
Yeah.
that's part of it. And again, social media lies. I mean, some of these people actually do this routine every single day and they stick to it. But most people are just blowing smoke and showing their best version of their lives online. So part of it too is like recognizing maybe this isn't the truth, but I mean, it's a challenge. It's a constant challenge, I think, for any human being to build a healthful habit that they want to build. That's why James Clear is as big as he is, right? The idea of atomic
Mm-hmm.
habits. You could read his book 45 times and yet still you'll struggle to keep something. But again, recognizing like, hey, I'm a human being. That's okay. Tomorrow's another day, right? So, and being able to do that over and over again for, however long you live is something that is something that needs to be learned.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with the catastrophizing catastrophe. I lost the word. Okay.
Catastrophizing. I used a big
Thank
word today.
you.
I have a friend who points it
I,
out every time I
I
do it,
think
and it just like is
I
in
think
my
my
brain.
brain went in like two different directions with two different words, and we were trying to. It's fine. I make up words all the time. But good gracious. I think that we do, and I used to do this to myself, right? Like I would get in a really good routine of something, and then something would happen. I'd be like, and that's it, right? And it's again, like you said, it's being kind to yourself. It's going back to talking to yourself as you would if you were a child, and giving that grace and giving that space in anything that we do. But now here's a question. When is, there's a difference in giving yourself grace and space, and that grace and space becomes more of an excuse.
Yeah, yeah, and that, I mean, the thing that I realize more and more, I'm in a lot of business circles. I'm in, communities and masterminds and things of that sort, and I am constantly reminded how fundamental mindset is to people and their lives, their personal as well as their professional success. And it is a thing that is so difficult to do. It sounds, people, like somebody the other day was like, oh, losing weight is just about calories in and calories out, and people just have to do that. And, that's that's not really how life works. I
Mm-hmm.
love that you think that life is that easy because you pulled that off. But, for 98% of human beings, that's not how it's going to work.
Yeah.
So there is you have to, at some point, you just have to decide to do it. And you just have to, and to me, one of the things that has honestly surprised me as a woman with ADHD and an attention span thing is I have been on LinkedIn for like 2 years and I have posted 3 times a week consistently for 2 years. And it's just like one day I decided to do it and I just did.
Hmm.
And that's weird, but part of it was I actually made a promise to myself and that worked for me. So that was
Okay.
the trick for me. Like I made a promise to myself and I didn't want to let myself down. That doesn't work for everyone. I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't work for everything in my life either. It's just that for that one thing, I just said, I'm going to do this, right? Sometimes spite works really well. I was also, I think in at the time I was in a community and everybody was picking a social media to market on, and I was the only one that picked LinkedIn. And so there was probably also
Interesting.
an element when I began of I'm going to prove to them that I made the right choice and they didn't, right? Like I wanted to be. So that unfortunately, nothing motivates me like somebody telling me I can't do something, right? Like that.
Yeah.
I'll, and so I mean there are mechanisms, and so there is a piece of metacognition that comes into this that I don't know everybody thinking about your thinking. And I don't know that people
Mm.
always take the time to do it. And sometimes I think we're so busy that we don't. I think it's one of the reasons why some of the more powerful people in the world actually journal because they're just taking that time to think and write things down and be in a quiet place and get away from the screen and all those things. But being able to go through that process is a real like power move. In fact, like Oprah, I know, like credited a lot of her credit to just actually journaling. Like it's just taking,
Interesting.
and a lot of people, like Justin Welsh, she, goes for long walks every single day, like having that quiet time, because when you're constantly just filtering noise, you can't ever hear that voice, that internal voice.
Yep.
But but there is a level of self-awareness that you have to know what is and is not going to work for me, and what is the negative voice that's in my head that I'm listening
Mm-hmm.
to that I might need to figure out how to turn off, and what do I need to do to turn that off, right? And people, taking the time to make those choices and to think of to purposely think about what we're telling ourselves from day to day and what that messaging is. Because if the voice internally is telling you something that you're going to fail, or here you've just failed again, that's a whole that's something that needs to be unlearned as a process. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing is like if you're not going to support yourself, then who is, right? Like you should be your own biggest fan. And yet
Yeah.
most of us are not.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I know I played into that realm so much where it was like nothing that I could do was ever going to be good enough because I always knew that somebody else was doing more, right? Like I lived in that spiral for such a long time. And it's funny that you talk about journaling because one of the things that really helped me a couple of years ago when I kind of started really looking at just all the aspects of my life, but more specifically like how I do talk to myself and what are my thoughts was journaling. And I'm curious to know if you have any tips on journaling for anyone, because I know that, like, for me, when I first thought about it, I was like, okay, first off, this is stupid. So I'm gonna be honest, that was my first thought. I
Yeah.
was like, this is stupid. And the other thing was, I was like, I don't want to write like a dear diary. Like, this is dumb. Like, why do we? And so, one of the things that worked really well for me was literally starting on the page about how stupid this was. And I would literally start some of my journal entries that way, but it's almost like it got it out of my system.
Hmm.
And then once that kind of got out, I was able to keep writing. And I was actually really surprised by myself on, like I would put timers, right? I'm like, I was going to do it for 5 minutes, I was going to do it for
Yeah,
10 minutes. And
that
then I'd find
works.
myself writing way past the timer. And I had like 4 or 5 freaking pages. And I'm like, holy crap. But I felt so much better afterwards. So I'm curious to know, like, do you have any tips for people that are like, I don't know, maybe I could try this journal thing that you think has been helpful for you or your clients?
Yeah. I personally live by a bullet journal. Like I don't even know how many years at this point, Ryder Carroll like developed
Ooh.
bullet journaling because he had ADHD. And the interesting thing that happened with bullet journals is that people started making these like wildly artistic, amazing bullet journals and all these like charts on how I'm going to track my water consumption and and posting it on Pinterest and like all these. And so for a very short period of time I tried to like up my game because I wanted mine to look beautiful, right? And when as soon as I started doing that, I stopped using it. Like because became
Oh,
too much work. Like the
yep.
whole point of a basic bullet journal was it was like Ryder Carroll's way to make sure that he kept track of things that are in his brain, right? And so making it fancy, something that might bring people joy, but to me just added an element of pressure and work
Mm-hmm.
to something that was supposed to be functional. But as far as like journaling, like just writing in my journal, I I gave up on making it look pretty, which made a huge difference for me,
Yep.
right? Like some days I make a list. Like I'm not writing like prose, right? I'm not writing my thoughts. I'm not writing. Sometimes it's, this is, I want to make a note I learned something today. Sometimes I use prompts when I'm totally at a loss. The timer thing is really funny because that like some of the students I work with that works for, right? It's like you have to read for at least 5 minutes and they set a timer
Mm-hmm.
and I try really hard to get them something that they're gonna like and they read past. Like if I like that to me is like the biggest success ever is that I got
Yep.
an eighth grade boy to like read it like he didn't put the book down because it was so good after the timer went off, right? So, but sometimes you have to create those like I've promised myself I'm going to just at least do 5 minutes and get that
Mm-hmm.
going. But it has been I've upped my journaling this year just since 2026 and I feel like it's making an even bigger difference in clarifying my thinking and my goals in life and my priorities and where I want to spend my time. I have a lot of, crazy things going on in my life. Like I have a daughter who's been in Germany all year that's about to come back in 2 weeks. And my other daughter has just gotten into a program to go to Kyrgyzstan next year. So I'm prepping a kid to go to
Gosh.
Kyrgyzstan and bringing one back from Germany. And then I have parents who live next door that I care for as well. And so I have a lot of competing priorities for my time. And so
Mm-hmm.
it becomes very important for me to choose very carefully about what I do with my limited hours. And somehow the journaling has really helped me not only like think through my thought processes, but also kind of keep myself maybe catch myself when I get off course faster because I'm thinking
Yeah.
on a daily basis at the end of my day, like, yeah, that maybe that was not the way to, and so it's keeping me on track a little bit better as well.
I love that. And you said that you do your journaling at the end of your day. Because I know some people that like to do journaling in the morning. Um, but I know that for me specifically too, journaling in the evening helps a lot more because I already have all the thoughts and all the processes and like all the things. And I can at
Mhm.
least like get it out of my head. I've done some journaling in the morning, but I feel at that point in time it's different. Or maybe I'm like running through what it is I want to do for my day, but I have to
Yeah.
be very cautious because if not, I start thinking of like all the things, and now I've started my entire day with 30 ideas, 15,000 things that I need to do, the list that needs to be done by this week. And instead I just sit there and go, well, shit, where do I start?
Well, and there is some research that shows that people who journal in the evening actually sleep better because I think there's something about the offloading as well
I
that's
have heard
useful.
that.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, especially for people that sit in bed and just kind of, I used to do that a lot. Um, Usually I can sit down and kind of go through things, or I'll put stuff on my calendar for the next couple days, write some tasks out and stuff like that. But yeah, I have heard that from a lot of people that they sleep a lot better because it's like you just brain dump all the things, get it out of your head, which is interesting because people are like, "Oh, I'm just gonna like make a mental note." And I'm like, "No, no, no. Like your brain needs you to physically write it out. It needs to see you put it somewhere or it doesn't put it to rest," which I
Yes.
have found really fascinating that that is how the brain legitimately works. And I was talking with a psychologist not too long ago, and she was explaining more on like how the neurotransmitters work differently when it is pen to paper versus like
Mm.
just talking it out or like typing it on a computer,
Yeah.
which is interesting because we've been like everything around us is digital now, right? But I do find it really relaxing to be able to write. My hand hurts, but I do find it really relaxing to
Hmm.
be able to write things out.
Yeah, yeah, I have grown a pen obsession because of my journaling over the years.
Oh, I
Because
love
there's
that
something to
so
like
much.
having just the perfect like smooth feel
Oh,
about, and
absolutely.
it's a
Yes.
small problem.
I could totally see that because I am so picky about my pens. Like I have three of them out. I'm not even kidding you, but I have three of them right now and they're all different. And depending on what I'm doing or like what piece of paper I am writing on, depends
Yes.
on the pen but yeah, I like it to feel, yep, I got that, Angela.
Or sometimes how I feel in the moment, right? Like I'm feeling
Yeah.
like this pen today.
I have ones that are colored just so I can have fun one day and like I want to write in blue. Like, yeah. Yep, I've got some of those.
Agreed.
So, oh my
Agreed.
gosh. Angela, thank you so much for all the information, for all the feedback, for just creating a space where this is a normal conversation. It doesn't mean that you're weird. It doesn't mean that you're outplaced. I've gotten to the point to where I'm so tired of labels that we stick on ourselves because then we box ourselves in, right? Like you're
Yeah.
still an individual, you're still a human. You just operate different. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like I don't want to be like everyone else. So thank you for
Hmm.
bringing
Yeah.
that into the conversation today. As we come to the close, I know that I want you to let everybody know where they can find you, how they can follow you, and I know you've got something special kind of going on as well. So I'll let you kind of take it away.
Yeah. Yeah. The two places that you can find me, the one that you'll find me more often, I'm actually on LinkedIn fairly regularly, probably every day. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Angela Marie D'Antonio. It's my full name. I also have a website with the same name if you're looking. And right now I have an opening that is for what I call the insiders list. So some of what I'm building in real time. I'm writing a book, I'm creating keynotes, and I share that with people, through a newsletter that has a very irregular cadence, just so you know. You're not going to hear from me every week. Sometimes it's every other, and sometimes it's a once a month. But I share what I'm building and what I'm writing, and because I love getting feedback and kind of having discussions amongst the people that are in my community. So I have an insiders list that you can sign up for. You can sign up on my website or on my LinkedIn for that as well.
Which I think is so cool. So, of course, we'll have all that information in the show notes. We'll make it super easy for you to connect with Angela. And we'll drop the link for her insiders list. I find that so fascinating, and I love it at the same time. Like, I would love to see other people's opinions and thoughts, and because I think that it helps as you're creating in the direction that you want to go, and maybe even giving you ideas on
Yeah.
what you want to continue writing about. So,
Yeah,
I
it's
love
fun.
that.
It's fun to create it in real time, and again, you're bringing humans into the factor. I'm not creating something quietly in my room by myself. I'm creating it with people's input and putting it out there into the world piece by piece. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Angela, do you have any closing thoughts or anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
I wish I had something really brilliant to say here, but I don't.
I love that so much. Don't worry. I can't tell you how many times I'm just like, I need a default phrase that I go to.
I know I'm thinking right now I should have, but I don't.
You know what though? You have something that is on your website that I absolutely love and I want to actually speak that out, which was, oh my gosh, where is it? I got off of your page. You are not broken, the ruler is. Oh my, I
Yes.
have to find
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Is that what it says?
that is one of the things I speak about a lot. It's about the fact that again, you're not behind. You're running your own race, and that you are, yeah, you are not broken. It's the ruler.
I love that phrase so much. I love that. So that's what we'll leave everybody with. Angela,
For
thank you so
me, thank
much.
you.
Love it. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today and sharing all of your information. Sincerely, thank you.
That's awesome. This was fun. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. To everybody else out there, oh my gosh, go follow Angela. As she said, she's more on LinkedIn. We'll have all that information in the show notes. And I think that this is a beautiful reminder that you are not broken. And I know I talk about this a lot when we talk about trauma and other things as well. And I truly do believe that none of us are broken, that we do have some things that are going on, but everybody has something that is going on. So find out what that thing is that is yours and lean into it. Learn to love yourself, give yourself some grace, take a little bit of time, and know that you are exactly where you are supposed to be in whatever your journey looks like at this moment. Until next time, do one thing positive for someone each and every day and see the difference that it makes in your life. Catch you later. Thank you so much for tuning in to Real Chat with Kat today, where real stories meet real solutions. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review on Apple, and share this with someone who may also need to hear this as well. Let's also keep the conversation going. Follow me on socials at The Lotus Effect, connect with our incredible guests, and remember, you are never alone. Your story matters, and you have the ability and the power to rewrite it. You always have a choice. Until next time, stay strong, stay inspired, and keep showing up as the incredible, unstoppable